Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing a painting from one of the little sketches that I did in my sketchbook the other day. So I'll just find that one. And it was this one of the canal that I wanted to do again with perhaps a little bit more detail and taking a little bit more time. I was actually teaching at the time when I did this, so I only did it in 5 or 10 minutes, and I used quite a big pen to do it. I used a brush pen, which I don't normally use, and I actually quite like the effect of the brush pen, but it could have gone horribly wrong because with a pen that big, you know, if you make a mistake, it's much more difficult to cover it up. When you use a smaller pen and you make a mistake, you can just do some extra lines and sort of change things a little bit. But with something so bold, it could have gone wrong. So it's the first time I'd used such a big pen when I'm doing my sketching. Normally, as you can see, I use a much finer one. I did one again, that's a different one. This is again the same bridge, but I don't know if you can see. On the second picture I was sat about here somewhere, so I saw this wall foreshortened, the inside of it, and much more of this side, if you can see that. So it's quite tricky because this wall here was foreshortened, and as you can see I've used that big thick pen and I've had to correct it there, but it's not come out too badly. But today I'm going to do this one where the bridge is from a little bit farther away. Okay, so I'll just prop that up there and try and work from that. So it's when you work from your sketchbook, you're getting much more free sketches and drawings than you would if you're using a photograph. So I'll start with the top line of the bridge, and I'm very familiar with this bridge because it's just behind our house and it does sort of go over in a little bit of a curve. And then it has a line of longer stones running underneath. So as you can see, I'm sketching very, very quickly, and this is how I would sketch when I was out and about. And just going to reinforce that line because, of course, those stones there cast shadows underneath. Just a little shadow where the shape of the stone is going up. So we've got that second line, and then we have another similar line going parallel to that, a little bit further down the bridge, and again that's got stones going along. Now the girls that I was teaching were actually counting all these stones. Now, as you know, I'm quite an impatient painter and drawer. I wouldn't have the patience to count all those stones. I'm more about getting, you know, the shapes right, and but it was making me laugh that they were counting all the stones there. So now you'll see I just put some odd lines in just to give us the impression that that's, you know, blocked as well there. And then the line of the arch, and we don't see actually where it's touching the ground because there it's covered in foliage. So that's the outside line of the arch, and then the inside line gets to about here and then it goes down quite steeply. And then you do see the path coming out from behind and that's flagged as well. So if we just pop a few little bits of flags there. And then we've got the outside of the arch. So can you see as I draw in little lines. I don't try and draw the whole thing in one swoop, as it was much more accurate if you sort of draw in little lines. And of course, like I've said before, you can always do this using a pencil first and then going over. And I know what's going to happen here. I'll end up liking the one I did out there better than this one, but that doesn't matter. It was just to show you the process, really. So I'll start off with the basic shape of the bridge, which is actually much squatter, I think, than the original, but maybe not. Maybe just because I've put it in on a bigger piece of paper. And then I'll put some basic shapes of some trees. So there was a tree behind here, and there was some ivy coming down the bridge here. And this is really not much form to it, just so that I know where these things are for when I come to applying my paint. Some more trees here, and one over this side. And then we can see those trees underneath the bridge as well. But before we do those, we'll get some of this shadow in. It's very, very dark under the bridge. And we want to make some of that shadow go in the direction that that stonework's going. And we can increase the shadow with the paint as well. So if you see with this one, I've gone very, very dark because of that dark brush, and then I've put a Payne's grey over the top. With the one I didn't do them actually on the same day, I did it a couple of days later. I actually hadn't used this purple before in my new little Sennelier set, so I decided I wanted to have a go with the purple, and then I put a little bit of orange in the background just to give that contrast between the two, and I actually quite like that, but I don't think we'll use the purple today because it wasn't a colour that was actually there. I just wanted it to get that contrast of the shadow under the bridge. And then we've got an area of grass comes down here from behind the bridge, and then there's the base of some more of these trees here, keeping that very abstract really. There's lots of trees and grasses, and then there's some reeds that are actually growing in the canal that we'll put there, just to give us an impression of a few reeds behind the bridge. And again there's some here at this side, so we can't actually see the water, there's so much vegetation going on that we don't actually see the water in the canal there. So more into the foreground, we're going to have some bigger leaves and some flowers. So what I did as well whilst I was down there was I did some, let me see where it's at, I did a page of some of the flowers that you find down there, so that's good to have. So whilst you're working you can skip between the picture of the overall bridge and the ones of the flowers, so we get the right flower shapes for the vegetation that's there. Lots and lots of dog daisies this year. I don't know if it's something to do with the weather, but there's absolutely loads of dog daisies out this year. And I'm not going to draw every one. I'm just going to draw one or two in the foreground, and then the rest can just come with the colour. Some bits of grasses and some different shapes, because it's such a jumble of leaves and grasses. And these come all the way across here, because this is where I was sitting. They were the canal went off this way, and these were on the banking here. And because of the height that they came up, like I say, we couldn't see the water. I'm just actually wondering whether maybe I should put some of the water in. I don't know. A lot of vegetation sort of hanging down as well on this side. And as I say many times, you're going to have a lot more time than me to do a lot more detail in these foreground flowers if you really wanted to. I like to keep it loose and just think about the colours really, and the tone. Then up this side there was some more obvious tree shapes. But again, I'm not going to put all the detail in that. And don't forget, these foreground grasses need to be much taller than the ones that we've got further back to get the scale right. So very, very busy foreground. And what we also need to do really at this stage is put some areas of shadow in there with the pen. This is something you do whilst you're out sketching as well. Look where it's really dark. You know, the flowers themselves and all these grasses are going to be casting lots of shadows because they're so built up, abundant, that they're going to have plenty of shadows underneath them. But of course we can put more shadow in with the paint afterwards. And these trees in the background are going to be casting shadows underneath them. So just in a few places, just quite randomly really, just go a little bit darker, a bit more shape. And then we've got some trees and shrubs coming down this side, more or less covering over the path. And I'm just wondering now whether to use completely different colours or to use the palette that I used when I was there. And I think actually I quite like the colours on here. So I think rather than using the Winsor & Newton ones that I normally use in the studio, I will get that little Sennelier travel set and we'll start and pop some colour onto this now. Now this little set actually comes with its own little brush, and I have used it and it's okay, but it's not great. You don't get a brilliant point with it and it doesn't hold a massive amount of paint. So I will be using a slightly bigger brush. This is a round one and I can't see the number. It's probably about a number 6 I would think, a synthetic one. So it's a size that I use a lot. And like I say, I like to use a round one that comes to a nice point. So I'm going to try and remember the colours now that I used. But also, you'll be used to seeing me working in the studio, putting a wash on first and working wet in wet, because that's really my preferred way of working. But when I'm out and about, things are drying so quickly, I don't do that. I just put the paint onto dry paper and then allow the colours to mix or go over each other. So you can see these bottom layers have dried before the next one's gone on, because it's such a sunny day when I was doing it. So I just keep adding the colour really. I don't worry too much about the blending and things. It's just when you're out and you're trying to do it quickly and you want to just get an impression of where those colours were and things, you don't worry too much about it being perfect. Just to give you a nice little pleasing little sketch. So I'll start at the top with some blue. And what I did with this set, I'm trying to think which colour it was. It's a phthalo blue. And if you look, it's very, very bright. So what I did was I added a touch of this red. No, sorry, I didn't. The orange. I added a touch of orange to it because obviously that's on the opposite side of the colour wheel, and it just made it a much more natural blue for the sky. And I've just popped a little bit of colour in, and I didn't worry about there being some white of the paper left coming from behind. That could be some clouds. And allowed that dry brush to go on there as well. And then whilst I had it, I think we did put some in the path, because that's sort of a slaty type of a path, and in some of the stonework. So when you're doing stonework, what I tend to do is use the side of my brush. And with a brush like this, it's almost, you're almost making a stone shape, a brick shape. And again, I'm not doing every one, and I'm not counting the bricks and looking at where they all are. I'm just getting a shape and an impression. And again, thinking about where that shadow's going to be, because obviously you want some blues building up for those shadows. So I may as well use it whilst I've got it on the palette. I might as well use up that blue on some of that shadow, because we can put another darker colour again over the top of it later on. And that just lets us know that the wall's continuing down into the canal there by putting those lines there. So I tend to work down the painting so that your hand's not dragging over. Now the green, which again is a phthalo green, is very, very bright. So again, I added something else to it to make it less bright. So I added one of the reds. Now I'm trying to think, I think it was this one. And that made it a much more natural looking green. Let me just see which red it was. So that red was French Vermilion. And again, just use the side of your brush so you're covering more paper all at once. You know, if you use the tip of your brush like this, you're not going to be covering the tree very quickly, and like I say, your paint's going to be drying quickly because you're outside. So fill your brush up with paint, use the side and get that covered nice and quickly. And this nice bit of ivy that's coming down. So I've not actually done any more. I said I might do a bit more detail than I did when I was outside, but I've not really. I'm just trying to show you how I paint while I'm outside. Do it quite quickly. So bring those same colours through. You know, this tree is obviously going to be part of some of these trees that are down here. You don't want it to be, you don't want to be remixing a different green. Bring some of that green into the foreground. You might want some brighter green in the foreground. Just use up what you've got on your palette. Start and put some of those shapes in, maybe do some flicks. I'm running out of paint now, so I'm just going to flick some of that about at the bottom there. I'll make some more green. So this time I use the same phthalo green, but I'm going to add some of that lemon yellow to it as well. I will add the red as well. And some of the yellow to make it a little bit brighter. It was a very sunny day, and it's nice to have a nice little bright painting. So I've got a much brighter yellow now, and I'm going to just add some of that over the top to where the sun would be touching the tops of those trees. So just by using a couple of different greens, you're just making it look as if you've got a bit more going on. Some lighter and darker areas coming already. And of course, when you want things to come forward, you want them to have more yellow in them. So I'm just going to put even more yellow in to that same mix and put a few more colours in the foreground. I've sort of forgotten that we've got this tree up here, so let's just get some more green mixed with some of that red. Get some colour on this tree here. So I'm not doing the leaf shapes, I'm just putting the colour there where it would be on that tree. I actually must have used a completely different green. If you look at, sorry, I just knocked the camera there, this is a much brighter green here. So I maybe didn't add just as much of the red to it than I did today. But everything affects it, the amount of water, the amount of each pigment that you use to get the same mixes again is quite difficult. So I'm trying to think what I used on the actual bridge itself now to make these grey colours. And I can see that there's some orangey colour in there. But it wasn't the orange that I used, it was, I mixed the yellow with that red to make like a sandy colour. So I'm doing some sort of brick shapes and others areas where I'm just, you know, putting a bit of a wash on to get the colour where I want it. And then we had some greyer areas, and I think I made a grey from ultramarine and some burnt sienna, maybe. I can't remember. Maybe I should write down the colours that I use whilst I'm there, because it's easy to forget. So with your greys, I mean, burnt sienna and French ultramarines are very quick and easy grey when you're out and about. But you know, any three primary colours mixed together will make you a nice grey. So don't worry about going around these shapes you've already got there. Let them go over the top. And I'm sure some of you have been to classes where you've all been doing the same subject and you've all had the same teacher showing you what to do, and you'll have 10 completely different pictures, because with watercolour you can't replicate and copy and get the same thing, and that's it's nice actually that you get all these different ones. So you know, when you work from your sketchbook and try and do the same thing again like I'm doing today, you're gonna get a completely different picture. There's also quite a pinky colour on there. Again, we've got completely different colours, but if you look, there's quite a pinky peachy colour on and a purpley colour. It's a very different paper as well, so that's going to affect how things look. So maybe some of the ultramarine with some of that red for that purpley colour, with plenty of water, because I don't want it to be too strong. And I'm going to use that now to make some make a bit more of this shadow. You know, there's obviously a lip on that bridge there, and under here, under this row of stones, there's more shadow. And then use it to do the inside of this wall as well. So this is quite a different purple to that one that I used on the other picture, because I've made this one myself from those two. So the French vermilion and the French ultramarine. Just so that I've gone over the line there, just tidy that up a little bit. Doesn't really matter. So completely different colours now. So I'm going to go back to the yellow. I'm going to get some more yellow and brighten the whole bridge up with a bit of a wash of yellow over parts of that. In fact, I'll take it over some of the trees as well to brighten the whole thing up. So that's one thing I do like about these Sennelier paints. So this lemon yellow, you know, you can lay it over the top of the other colours and it really brightens everything up and alters the painting altogether, really. So some of these areas are still wet and some are dry, but this is what's going to happen when you're out and about, so don't worry about it too much. Well, some people like to do a drawing when they're out and then actually put the colour on back in the studio. You could use your camera to make a reference of your colours that you're using. So I'll keep the lemon to the outside of the bridge and not on the inside. And I'll also put plenty of it in this tree here. So we've gone much, much brighter than we were. But it's quite interesting how you get a completely different picture than you would if you were working from a photograph. Much freer, much looser way of working, because you're making your own picture in a way, really, rather than copying that photograph. So I'm going to just make some more of the yellows and greens for this foreground and go even stronger. Starting to use the tip of your brush a bit more. So obviously some of this paint under here is now dry, so we can now get some more detail on top of it. So just flick your wrist and use the tip of that brush to get some different shapes, and that's going to give a contrast to all those shapes that we've already got there of the more washy shapes from the side of the brush. Try not to obliterate your daisy shapes, and perhaps fill in one or two of those leaf shapes that you've made with your drawing earlier. And what we do need is to be darker in a lot of places. If we look now, we've got a lot of light colours there, very, very bright and pretty, but we do need to be darker in places. So on the one I did use Payne's Grey. I'm not sure whether I want to go that dark. I think I will. I'll get some of the Payne's Grey. And the darkest thing on the picture is the inside of this bridge, but it goes lighter towards the side. So again, because it's transparent, those nice purples and pinks and things that we've got already in there are showing through. And don't worry about these edges and things drying, because it's stone anyway. It's it's a natural thing, and it's also got a lot of wear to it, so it's not a perfect shape. So just pop some shadows in again underneath, in between these flowers and things. Let's make some negative shapes between the grasses. And if I look back to the original picture, the original drawing, I've got a lot more negative sort of drawing here of these tree shapes, the dark colours. You maybe have to think about where the shadow's going to be cast. They're going to be cast under these plants. And then we'll come back and put some extra shadow. So some of this on the original, a lot of the shadow was made by using that thicker pen. And I've just realised we've not actually put any of these stone colours in the path, because the path's made of the same kind of stone. So I'll just pop that there. And anybody going down to this bridge, if you're local, you'll say that bridge is not those colours, but it doesn't matter. It's just making a pretty picture that's the main thing. So I just feel these greens are a bit flat and boring at the minute. I'm going to go and put some darker green in. So I'm going to add some ultramarine to that, what's left in my palette here. Just get a bit more variety in some of these trees. and here I'll use it to show off the top of that bridge as well. I think that's better with a bit more of a variety going on. So again, using the side of my brush, and obviously some of these weeds and things are going to be going into that bridge over the side, so just very sort of loose with it all. And some of those darker ones in some of these reeds and things as well, just flick your brush again. Nice leaf there that we could fill in. So I'm hoping this has just given you an idea of how I paint whilst I'm out and about, and how, you know, easy it is to get quite a pleasing little picture just with a few colours, and just working straight onto dry paper and carrying on working and not worrying about where colours are running into each other and things, because they're drying so quickly anyway. You don't need to worry. And to finish off, I'm just going to use some colours straight from the palette quite thickly, which is what I did on the original one. So I'll take some of this lovely lemon yellow and put that in the centre of some of these daisies, and actually just imagine a few daisy centres in other places as well, just dot them around. Put some dots of colour. You've got very dappled light when it's like this, so you could, you know, that could be just a bit of sunshine popping through some trees or something. And I'll put some dashes of colour on the, thicker colour on the ivy there. Because of course this ivy here is much closer to us than these trees, which are further back the other side of the bridge. So save this thicker colour for the front of the bridge rather than anything that's behind it. These are sort of behind it, they're just at the edge of the path here, so we'll just pop some extra colour there. And then because we've got all these strong colours in the bridge, I think we need to bring some of those down into the base. So that red that we used before, we'll just pretend we've got one or two little bits of red in some of these flowers and grasses as well. And we could put some we could have used purple. It just makes the whole thing a lot more interesting, having a bit more colour in the foreground. And we will put some of the purple in as well, I think. Okay, so I think I'll call it a day at that. So I just really wanted to update you on using this little set that I bought, that I did the review on a few weeks ago. As you can see, I've used it quite a bit now, and it's so comfortable to use actually when you're out and about. It's not too heavy, your wrist doesn't start aching or anything like that, like it can do with some of your palettes. So yeah, it's very, very handy, whether you're sitting down or standing. It's really easy to use, and it's got these lovely bright colours, which is the thing I'm really liking about it. And as you can see, I've gone a bit overboard in some cases with the colour. That was actually a more tonal study. That was with a smaller brush, trying to get these darks behind these really shrubby, overgrown areas at the other side of the canal there. But like I say, this isn't true colours to what's there on the canal. It's just having a bit of fun with the colour that we've got on the palette, and getting the, you know, if your drawing's correct, your colours, you can have a little bit of fun with them. So the main thing was getting the drawing of the actual bridge itself correct. So two completely different pictures, but interesting to see what you can get from your sketchbook, working from your sketchbook, and if I had quite a few hours I could do a much more detailed picture just using those shapes and forms that I'd already got down there, and it makes a much more interesting picture than drawing from a photograph. The ladies that come here to learn, I'm always trying to say to them not to rely on photographs, and it's, you know, it's a good tip. Although we do use them in the tutorials and things, try to use your own sketches and your own sketchbooks to work from. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll be back again soon. Thank you for joining me, and bye for now.